Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I have a really special guest for you today. I have the CEO of Affinity Worldwide, soon to be published author and all around giver of information and helper. Eddie Wilson, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining. I know how extremely busy you are. Why don't you just give a feel for the people that don't know Affinity Worldwide, kind of where you're located, what all that encompasses, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, Affinity Worldwide is just, it's a grouping of companies. The home base is in Kansas City, Missouri. And we've got about 80 different companies or brands that touch Affinity Worldwide in some form or fashion. The probably more well-known brands that touch Affinity Worldwide would be Think Realty, which is a media and a web platform for real estate investors, the American Association of Private Lenders, National Real Estate Insurance Group, RentFax, Loan MLS. You just kind of start going down the list at that point. But yeah, you can see a lot of the companies at affinityworldwide.com.
Very cool. So I've always wanted to ask someone who's clearly as successful as you, 80 company CEO, all of that. When does it strike you that you can pull together the assets and the intellectual capital and just all of that to have 80 companies under that umbrella? That just feels like layers of complexity, but I'm sure it starts somewhere in that, puzzle.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not the mastermind. I've come in really to help with just a few of those. Mike Wren and Tim Norris were the kind of founders of that group. They got together, I think, around 10 years ago, and they were insurance guys that the insurance company just started yielding great results. Specifically, NREG is built, National Real Estate Insurance Group is built for real estate investors. And then they just started kind of amassing different opportunities. I came into it about 2 years ago. And really my focus is primarily on the services side for real estate investors. I'm an active real estate investor myself. Think Realty is really my brand, my baby. I've built it. It's been kind of my desire for this industry to give back. And really the two brands that I play heavily with today, other than just being loosely related to a lot of them, are Think Realty and the American Association of Private Lenders. So each one of our companies that are tied to Affinity Worldwide has an asset leader, a CEO or a president. And so all the while I do get the chance to play at the top, I really am focused on a couple of key brands. So, I think that focus is critical in any business. And so to be spread, if you truly were spread across 80 entities, there's no way you could be effective. And so it's having leaders that you can trust, letting those leaders do what they do best, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It actually makes me feel better because I was starting to feel like you have found a way to expand the day, or maybe you have a clone or something. I was just imagining this puzzle. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's break down.
I have a lot of great people that work for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I've heard about the team, and you attract great people. So you should be very proud of that, Eddie. I'm curious about Think Realty, when you sort of break that apart, and I'm really attracted to what you're doing as far as giving back. Was kind of the vision for that platform, that entity. Talk about Think Realty and how it's out there to serve real estate investors, because that's often a market that's not served well.
Sure. Yeah, so Think Realty is really a give back from our organization back to the industry, and it does serve a purpose in kind of the greater brand landscape. But we, touching real estate investors, I grew up in a family of real estate investors. So my grandfather has rentals, my dad has rentals. I was in corporate America. I managed TV and radio stations, had an ad agency. And when I started exiting some of those things, you just don't want to, you want to invest that wealth. And I naturally just went into real estate investing. So the problem was, as I talked to real estate investors across the country, there was really no aggregate, so you've got brands like Bigger Pockets, you have brands out there, but there was no true aggregate media source. And so to be the fundamental pieces inside of any growing, burgeoning industry is they have to have that media source that becomes that trusted, industry news, resource reference. And so I looked back towards the kind of the Bloomberg model and said, how do we create something that's aggregating the industry? We believe there's about 7.5 to 8 million active, intentional real estate investors in the country today. And how do I get that group of people together and really push the people that are doing it well into the front of the industry, so that people can look at the path they've created, as well as talk about tips and tricks and trends that are going on across the country from a data perspective. We acquired the Housing News Report that's now a part of Think Realty today. It's all data-driven, a data-driven publication. So that's really what we're going after. It's that Bloomberg model where we really want to be, it doesn't matter if you pick up Think Realty at, it's in every Barnes and Noble, or if you pick it up at your local RIA, group. We want to play across the entire industry and make sure we're supporting it and highlighting the people that are doing well.
That's great. And to have that single platform or be that aggregated or Bloomberg model makes a lot of sense, because it's to do that, you become the authority, and then it becomes that a magnet for others to want to be a part of.
Sure.
So that's a great model.
Yeah. And we don't really raise capital for our investments. A lot of us are real estate investors, but if we have a large real estate insurance group. And so, how do you speak to all the people when, everybody that's a real estate investor is still a part-time engineer or a doctor or a dentist, and so it really was hard. And until you could get a media source to pull them all together, no matter who they are and what they do, it was really hard to say, hey, you need this great insurance product or you need another service. So there was a motive behind it. And that is, we've got some great services that we would love to push into our industry as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I see that happening already. I do want to peel back to your story. I don't know that I've talked to a third generation real estate investor yet, right? So you said grandfather, father, yourself. I'm curious, what did you learn from your grandfather? Do you remember walking through units with him, or what was that relationship like? Do you remember?
I don't really remember much of the real estate investor journey, except for my father and my grandfather did it together. And so they built a lot of units together. And they were doing it. I remember as a kid, carrying block for foundations, or, standing there with a grade pole as they were digging footers, or, stuff like that. Like, I remember all that.
That's
stuff
awesome.
Growing up, standing on roof. Yeah. All the little odds and end jobs of picking up drywall scraps or cleaning windows, or, I grew up doing it. So in my mind, the thing that I learned was I don't necessarily want to do the work, but I see the passive income that they're receiving because of the work that was done. So, in my mind, it was like, I would rather generate capital, park capital into real estate versus growing the way that they did, so they were building from ground up. Much of their duplexes and properties that they have were built by them, so that was kind of the journey that I was on. But I will tell you that watching them put money into it and the return that they received, that when I exited the companies and had the cash to do it, it was a natural progression. Like, okay, how do I put my money into the real estate market versus the stock market or something that's more volatile?
Yeah. So you saw it as a way of storing wealth once you created your own little sliver of capital from your day job.
I did. Yeah. Yep. So I kind of created it, but then I also, obviously believe in the asset class because you've got appreciation and you've got, continued, wealth building. So it was a place to store, but it's also a place to grow.
Good point.
I always felt like the big real estate or the big investors who are investing in the stock market, we're playing in a very volatile space. Some people made it, some people don't. Real estate investors, if they span a period of time, almost always make it, so.
Yeah, that's a big key I'm trying to get people to see is if they think decades, right? I'm a buy and hold guy, right?
Sure.
Because I had a day job, and like you, my job was to generate capital during the day and then park it in an asset that would spit off little pieces of cash and appreciate, right? That's what I did for 15 years. And, now I'm trying to get people to realize that, most people can do it in 10 years or less is my belief, right? Hustle during the day, do your thing, and then save, right? Sacrifice, a dirty word, right? Live below your means, all these things that, many Americans aren't comfortable talking about. But then you buy decades, right? I left the workforce at 45, and now I, conservatively speaking, about 20 years of time. What's that worth, right? People don't make that connection. They see the glitz and glam on social media, people stacking up $100 bills or all that flipping and wholesaling stuff. but that's just another job, and it's fate for most people, right?
Right. It
Um,
is.
so I really love the idea of preaching, do your day job, build, either a media company like you had, or as a sales guy like I was, live below your means, and then invest. And then, yeah, over time, it'll take care of you, right?
Right.
It's just
It
how the
will.
math works.
Sure.
And then the other thing that annoys me out there is the financial industry, right? Call it Wall Street, for lack of a better term, is preaching 401ks and save a little bit here and there. And then I promise you in 40 years, things will be okay.
Right.
Real estate is a proven way, if you're willing to be conservative and don't over leverage, that you can be done in less than 40 years, significantly less than 40 years. Would you agree?
Right. Absolutely. The book I just wrote, the last 20 pages is kind of the formula that I built, which is all of this. It's similar to yours. I read your book a month or so ago, and it's very good, by the way, and I've recommended it to a few people. I believe in that long-term growth pattern of using real estate for passive income.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's all about, it's that seed you're planting. You don't get wealthy off of saving, you get wealthy off of investing.
Yes.
It's planting and harvesting, right? It's reaping and sowing. And so to the degree that you're willing to sacrifice and put away, it'll yield, back an exponential amount. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the thing is, I share your same concern. And a lot of the reason why we went at hard after the Think Realty brand was I felt like so many people were selling educational programs that really wasn't delivering what this industry can deliver, and I don't, Wall Street's a dirty word with most real estate investors. For me, I've had multiple exits with Wall Street. I mean,
sure.
Wall Street's now coming in, and saying, how do I buy 50 units off of you? And, and so, and for me, when it makes sense, I'll sell, and then I'll turn around and reinvest right back in real estate. I mean, it's like, the thing is Wall Street is, it's not very intelligent capital. So they'll buy something that I have that's performing. I can take that same amount of capital and go back and reinvest it far better than they ever could. So,
oh, no question. Yeah. When you get in the business and because you have to build a foundation of knowledge, right? And that's what it makes me nervous when I talk to new investors or I speak in front of groups and they're all excited, right? They're almost vibrating with excitement.
Right.
And I'm like, slow down, right? How do you know what a good deal is, a great deal is versus an average or bad deal, right? So, you got to do your own homework. And I think relying on people without having your own base of knowledge to be a filter is a mistake. And I see that in what Think Realty is putting out there is, guys, learn this, invest some time to protect yourself. Which is admirable.
The nice thing is this industry, as it's growing, the education and the knowledge is getting cheaper and closer to the consumer, so we've invited a lady that has built her own home off of YouTube videos because she didn't have enough money she was a single mother. She was supposed to be coming to our Atlanta conference. And it's like, that's fascinating to me. Like, you don't have to spend big money on education, but education is that foundation. You have to have it. If not, you become that casualty like everyone else that goes, yeah, my first 3 deals were horrible, but it was a great education. Don't be that guy either, So,
yeah, that's bad for literally hundreds of dollars, right?
Yeah.
We're not even talking thousands anymore.
Right. Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
You can get a great education, and there's, YouTube University is real, right? I still go there, and I've been doing this a long time. So let's talk about your book, Time, Wealth, Purpose. I believe this is your first book. Yeah, look at that.
Didn't you show it there? Yeah. So interesting enough, I have written 4 books. I've never published one. Really, because I always get to the end, and you go through that process and you edit, and then I always look at it and I go, this one's for me. I wrote this for me. It was more about my journey, so I'll pass it on to my kids or whatever. This one, Time, Wealth, Purpose, was actually a much larger book, and then I've reduced it way down. Because it really is the pillars of why I built Think Realty. So I believe that there are 3 reasons why every real estate investor gets involved. Number 1, they want time. It's what you said. What if I can exponentially increase, get to retirement faster and gain 20 years, what's that worth? So it's time. Obviously, it's wealth. I define wealth a little bit differently. I've got a lot of orphanages and nonprofits that my family and I support and have built around the world. And so wealth to us doesn't mean a Bentley in the garage. Wealth to us is having enough to live on today without diminishing what I have tomorrow, so it's that whole passive mindset. What do I need to live on today? And if I expend that resource, have I hurt myself for tomorrow? So that's wealth to me. And then purpose. I think that a lot of people get involved because they want time, they want wealth, but ultimately I believe they want to generate purpose. And so how many people have come up through this industry and now are doing amazing things, revitalizing communities, building orphanages, working with Habitat for Humanity, Veterans Path Up. I mean, like, there's all these great organizations that have come because of successful real estate investors. And so that's the premise of the book, is really to stoke this passion that for someone who is interested in real estate investing, that you should get in it for the right reasons. Same thing that you were just saying, like, it's not about the HGTV and I'm going to build this beautiful house and I'm going to make millions of dollars. It's get in it for the right reason, find the path that is a long-term path, not a get rich quick path. And that's the premise of the book. It's more of my philosophy of real estate investing, and it's the pillars by which I built Think Realty on.
That's outstanding. And from my perspective, those three words, time, wealth, and purpose, are perfect, because you get into this business probably for wealth, right? It's the sizzle that's on the steak. Then you realize what you're doing is you're buying time. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you this much: if you don't have a purpose, you won't have that thing to anchor on. Right. That will take you through the hard days and realize that this is a decade, right? If you're just kind of in it for the sex and sizzle, the first hiccup or downturn or eviction or whatever, and you're like, I'm gone. That doesn't work. It is that purpose. That makes sense. So congratulations for anchoring on those three. I think it's in pre-release right now. When could people find it on Amazon, you think?
Within the next week or so, first week of May. So however long that is coming up, I've lost track. First week of May, it'll be available on Amazon.
All right. And again, Think Wealth Purpose. I'm guessing it'll be paperback and as an ebook, but that's just a guess.
Yes, that's it. You got it.
Very cool. I look forward to picking that one up. That should be a lot of fun. So I'm curious now, when you go back to your story, right? You exit the media business. You're a third generation real estate investor. Where did you move your capital in? Was it single family homes? Was it bigger commercial apartment buildings, self-storage? What was Eddie's,
I started out, my father had a bunch of opportunities in Ohio. So I was living in Atlanta at the time, and he had some opportunities in Ohio. And I went back there and started buying land and building multifamily, but small multifamily. So started out with duplex and moved up. And the reason I did that was because it was an underserved community that didn't have a lot of rentals, but then there was the NEO-UCOM, so the Northeastern Ohio College of Medicine, didn't have enough housing. And so what we did was, I felt like, well, first of all, and to me, I'm very analytical. So I thought, well, if I have two doors versus one to pay the mortgage that I'm going to create, if I can leverage these things and keep going, with the capital I have, or at least leverage them to a degree that I was comfortable with. And so we started buying lots, aggregating lots, tearing down properties, and building brand new units. So that was my first step into it. My dad had already done some of that, and maybe had 4 or 5, buildings in that general area. So he kind of paved the path for me. And then I went in and just, did it as much as I possibly could for a period of 3 or 4 years. And then everything beyond that has been opportunity driven. So I believe real estate's hyper local. You got to know your market. You got to know your opportunities. So I've bounced around. I've lived in Atlanta, Chicago. Obviously now I have the businesses in Kansas City, but I still live in Atlanta, and so I'm kind of all over the place. So I can't help though but look for every opportunity around me wherever I am. So now I've got units in Ohio. I've got units in Atlanta. I had some units in Indiana right outside of Chicago. I've got units in Kansas City. Last year, 2 years ago, I started getting heavy into multifamily and multifamily syndications. Okay. A lot of the reason is because as I exited, I needed to put my capital somewhere bigger and better so that I could 1031 it. 1031 exchange, so I could avoid the capital gains tax. And so that's what kind of propelled me. And so it's all been opportunity driven, which I think once, like you said, once you build that base and you understand the fundamentals of it, then you're just looking for the next big opportunity, and making sure you're buying right. So now I have commercial buildings, I have big multifamily apartment complexes. I got into my first hotel last year as an investor. I still haven't done self-storage or anything like that, but I'm fairly traditional in my investing style. Still have the majority of mine is single family or small multifamily duplexes or triplexes. The next, biggest group is multifamily, and then I've got a couple of commercial and one hotel. So it's like, I can't help but look at everything, but I'm still fairly traditional.
Very cool. And when did you start in Ohio? Was that 2003, 5, 12?
That would be the year 2002 or 2003. Yep, right in that time period.
Yeah, so right around the same time we started.
Yeah.
So you rode the wave up. I'm not sure what Ohio had, but in California, where I am, right, from 2003 to like 2008, it was just just 30% appreciation or whatever it was. Then it rolled over. Did Ohio have the same kind of run up over, or was it more flat?
Sure. It was fairly flat. So we had a lot of opportunity come to, up until like 2007, 2008.
Okay.
The problem with 2007 and 2008 is we started slowing down for different reasons than everybody else. We were building units at that time, and the construction cost for materials went through the roof because of issues in China and lumber.
Yeah.
And so we slowed down more because we couldn't make the numbers work, and I was looking for other opportunities. So I was kind of, and I didn't have a lot of leverage on those newer buildings. So during the downturn, I didn't really invest a lot. I kind of sat on what I had. And then as the downturn started to, then the downturn happened, and then, there's foreclosures everywhere, where all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I'm in on that. So then
give me some of that.
And so then a lot of my foreclosures, over the past 3 or 4 years have turned into retail properties.
Yeah.
They were pretty much just rentals back when I bought them in 2011, 2012. So then now I've kind of exited out of a lot of those, especially in Indiana, and because they turn into retail properties and not just rentals. I mean, the amount of money that I was making on the sales of these properties was crazy. You couldn't pass it up.
Yep.
And then I was taking that capital and reinvesting it in whatever opportunity I've had over the past 2 or 3 years. So that's kind of the progression of where we were.
Yeah. And that's what happens, right? You invest early on, you build that foundation, then the market cycle happens, and you have chances to exit, either a 1031 exchange or a sale from a rental to an owner occupant where the spread's bigger. And you just have the ability to adjust the portfolio. Right.
Exactly. And that's how investing should be done. When you over leverage and you buy incorrectly, you are always at risk of becoming the casualty, which you've heard, hundreds of people talk on stages and go, I got crushed and then I had to reinvent myself. Well, if you do it right, you leave enough margin in there for the expectation of those market cycles and market corrections. And obviously the recession was a much bigger dip. But if you buy right and you don't over leverage your properties and you got enough cash flow coming in, it really doesn't hurt you.
Yeah, that's so nice to hear, because I've been echoing that, and people almost push back because the prevailing trend in a market like we're in that's been up for 5 years is maximum leverage. And I'm like, no, stop it. Right? Just because a bank will loan you an 80% LTV doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Maybe 70 or 65%. Because I saw the downturn, right? We both know people, I'm guessing, that were worth 8 figures, not 7, 8, that lost everything in the crash because they were over leveraged.
Yep.
They couldn't handle it. So I'm glad there's other people talking about being conservative, and it's not just me. It sometimes feels lonely when people come back to me and go, well, if I put too much down, then my return's terrible. I'm like, well, you could survive any downturn. What do you want? So it's really cool.
To me, the number I'm more interested in is not just my return. I hear people use, phrasing like ROI and stuff like that. Like, I'm more interested in that kind of IRR, long-term return, which is really dictated by the delta between what my monthly cost and what I can bring in.
Absolutely.
So it really is that cash flow that tells the whole story. So to me, I'm not necessarily interested in, I'm interested, but it's not my main focus on what is my percentage rate of return on this investment? What I'm really concerned is that this is yielding enough cash flow after my taxes and some of my properties that I have to pay the water bill and all those things, so that it gives me enough buffer that if this property goes vacant for a year, that it's generating enough cash that it pays, I'm still fine, so that's kind of the number I look at.
Being conservative is okay, because again, this is a business you should think in decades. And I don't know about you, but I think I feel very certain saying that we won't have unemployment below 4% forever, right? The business cycle is real. It has to, right? Right? Yeah. Or inflation's just going to go out of control. Right. So being conservative is okay. So I am curious, Eddie, when you think about Think Realty, let's talk about Eddie, the investor, first. When you look out 3 to 5 years, is Eddie still kind of managing his portfolio and being opportunistic and 1031ing and getting bigger? Are you kind of done? What does Eddie the investor look like?
So that third part of my book, the purpose side, everything I'm building is to yield sustainable cash to all of the nonprofit that I'm building. So what I invest for today has everything to do with what it yields for what I'm invested in. So the 13, 14 orphanages that we own and operate and run, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not building this model that's unsustainable. I want to pair assets and yield so that as I pass it on to the next generation, it just doesn't go away, and you can go the route of trying to amass enough capital to create a trust and stuff like that. That's just a very inefficient way. If you tie it to real estate assets, the yield is much greater, which means that you can do that much more good for the world. So for me, I'm going to continue to invest heavily. Now, I'll invest based on the market cycle. I think we're at a period of plateau. I think I don't think we're going to see a recession. I think we're going to go back into a normal market cycle, which is probably on the decrease. We might see a 3 or 4% decline, but I think it's just going to level out and see a 3 or 4% increase. I think we go back into normal market cycles here in the near future. Well, as a buy and hold guy, when the market dips 3 or 4%, that's great. I know how to make money. That's where all the renters come out. So for me, it's when it goes up that I have a harder time making money. So anyways, that's kind of where I'm at for the next 4 or 5 years. I fully expect us to go back into a normal market, 7 to 8 year market cycle, 3%, 4% down, 3 or 4% up, which probably be really healthy for us right now.
I agree.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, let's make sure we talk about this purpose a little more. And I'm intrigued by the 13 or 14 orphanages that you own. Obviously, it's a passion of yours. Let's talk about that a little bit in just another way to give back in a tremendous way.
Sure. Yeah. So I started a couple of nonprofits, and then I'm partnered on a couple of nonprofits. I mean, the way that nonprofits work, nobody owns them, but they are entities there. I've actually created TV and radio stations around the world. I've got quite a few TV and radio stations, and we produce content for about 100 countries. Where those media sources aggregate people in need, we've found that a lot of them, and so we'll put a center or an orphanage there to really help meet those needs. Usually it's generated by the media source that I own there, a TV station or radio station. And then I support guys that are doing it really, really well that I partner up with. So one of the partners that I have is called Touch a Life. Well, Touch a Life, we support them in a big way. Orphanages in Honduras and India, and so on and so forth. And typically, I point people to John, who runs that, and because I'm a huge supporter of it, and have sat on his board for years and do a lot with it. So anyways, that is the purpose of why we exist and what we do as a family and as an organization. So even the companies that I own are really built to sustain the nonprofit that I've created, or nonprofits. So
that's tremendous. And I am curious. I'm guessing you always had this. You've always been the person that's given back. That's clear in my research. But when did you latch on to orphanages as going to be the one focus that you would have? Was that something very early in life when you had kids, or where did that come from?
No, it came from a need. And actually, it's interesting because I actually start the whole book, Time, Wealth, and Purpose, off with the story.
Awesome.
But I was in a foreign country and saw half the kids getting fed and then the guy running the orphanage couldn't feed the other half. He didn't have enough
Oh,
sustenance. And so you're sitting there watching these kids who couldn't be fed, and you're sitting there as an American who has everything you would ever desire, going, okay, I can fix that need. Like, again, I'm fairly opportunistic. So I'm sitting there looking, going, I want to help them, And
yeah.
so I said, okay, let's stop this. You tell all those kids we're going to feed them today. Well, we get in the truck and we're going back to buy more rice and chicken and stuff like that to take it back. And he said, you can appease your conscience by doing this one time, but I'm here every day. And I'm going to tell you, it's not going to make a difference.
Right.
At some point you have to choose the ones that, you can help, and you got to help them, and you can't, and you have to give them enough that it does help them. And so then, my wife and I decided, okay, we can take that on as a lifelong journey. We can support that. We can meet that need. It's not just a fleeting moment, emotional moment. And then that just kept growing. And then it seemed like everywhere I went, I was in India, and I went to a leper colony where our radio station is in India, and realized these kids are put into the lowest class. They can't go get a job. The government won't provide them education. And I said, well, what if we build an orphanage and do an educational center and we teach them, So
Nice.
that's just kind of how it's just like, you get into a place where if your foundation is solid, and, I really believe in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like once your needs are met, then you can begin to help others meet needs. Well, that's the greatest part about real estate investing, is if you've got enough money coming in every month to live, you begin to focus on, bigger and greater problems than just, I need to put more money in my 401k, or I need to, to have enough to retire. And so that's kind of how it's all happened. I don't know that there was some
Wow.
big master plan. It's just been when you get this foundation we're talking about, then you can begin to live life, intentionally.
That's that just goes to show what kind of character you have, that to see that not just appease your conscience for a day or two, right, until you're gone, but to go, no, I'm going to fix this problem long term. So very
Sure.
very great to hear, and warms my heart to a lot to see. Again, real estate investing allows you to live and your family to live, but also gives you extra so you can give back as you see fit, which is just huge.
Right.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
so that's what Eddie's doing, which is very admirable. How about Think Realty? Where do you see evolving that platform?
Think Realty, I think our industry deserves a platform like this. And obviously it doesn't make money for us today, but I want people to have this kind of companion resource that they can trust, that's not been paid for or bought by gurus and people that are intentionally trying to take advantage of them. My desire is kind of that tipping point, which is, I believe 2 to 3 million, we've got 450,000 people that are actively coming to the brand today. But I think really to make a difference in this industry, you got to hit to that 2 to 3 million mark. And then beyond that, my goal is once I kind of hit that tipping point, then I really want to reach back, and every person that is sitting there watching HGTV going, I should invest. Like, I almost see it as like the AARP model. Once you turn 50, whatever, you get the card and it's like, congratulations, you're part of the club.
Yeah.
I hope to kind of upset the entire model to say, the moment that somebody watches HGTV and goes, man, I should flip a house, that what we figure out what trigger that is, and then they get introduced to the brand, so we can say, okay, now let me tell you the real journey you're about to go on, and that's kind of my ultimate goal is, Bloomberg does it very well. AARP does it really well, where they get to that investor early so that they can vet some of the thoughts and choices they're having. It's not just throwing money to the wind.
Yeah, well, you've got to be real with people, which is what I appreciate by what you're doing. It's not all sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows, right? There are dark sides to this business. It tests you all the time, and you better come prepared to work.
Sure.
So it's pretty awesome. So as we wrap this up, how can people get a hold, or learn more about you? Look for the book, Think Realty, Affinity Worldwide. How can they get a hold of you and track what you all are doing?
Sure. I mean, you can go to affinityworldwide.com and just kind of see all the brands. But Think Realty is the one that I'm passionately involved in. I go to every one of our events. I write for the magazine. I sit in and do interviews on the podcast, the radio show. So they can interact with me primarily through Think Realty. The book will be on thinkrealty.com. And that's where I spend a majority of my time. If you're a private lender looking for the industry, I spend a lot of time on the American Association of Private Lenders, which is just a give back similar to Think Realty, but in the private lending space. And so I spend a lot of time over there as well. So the two brands you can see me and interact with me on are Think Realty and AAPL, American Association of Private Lenders.
Well, Eddie, thank you for again giving me your time. Your story is wonderful, very inspirational to think what real estate investing can do for you, your family, but also give you those extras, allow you to touch so many more lives, and to help kids around the world is very admirable. And congratulations on your first published book.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, man. Have a great day. Thank you.
And by the way, congratulations to you too on your book. It's a great book, and we need to reciprocate this and get your book out on the Think Realty platform too.
I would love that. It'd be a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Eddie.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.